Hello, and welcome to our channel, The Watchful Warrior. I am the Watchful Wife, and today we'd like to take you on a trek down the Merrimack River and talk to you about the river itself and some of the major cities that are found along the river, which we have observed are definitely important in the Old World timeline. The Merrimack River starts in Franklin, New Hampshire, formed by the Pemigewasset and Winnipesaukee rivers, and then flows over 110 miles out to the Atlantic Ocean in Newburyport, Massachusetts. It flows southerly through New Hampshire, through the cities of Concord, Manchester, Nashua, and then in Massachusetts to Lowell, Lawrence, Haverhill, and onto Newburyport. The term Merrimack originates from the Algonquian Native tribes. I did come across some information that said that the Algonquian is actually an umbrella term for several different Native tribes that have similar language roots. And then I came across this article from stolenhistory.net that relates the Algonquian language to the Gaelic Native tongue, which Merrimack means great depth. And one thing I thought was interesting to note is that when we're driving around New Hampshire, especially in this area known as the Merrimack River Basin, the one thing that we've noticed is just the plethora of dams that we find. And I was just surprised by this map that there's just an abundance, a sheer abundance of dams along the rivers and the tributaries of the rivers. And then this site, AmericanRivers.org, is an organization based in Washington, D.C., and states that the Merrimack River has 11 tributaries and 847 dams, which harness the river and its tributaries, so quite an abundance of dams. And there are 5 on the main river, and there are 3 are located in New Hampshire, and 2 are in Lawrence and Lowell, Massachusetts. The first city along the Merrimack that we're going to look at is Lawrence. And we already have several videos with some footage of buildings in Lawrence and mills, and we would suggest that you check that out. But Lawrence was really involved with the textile manufacturing with all of the big mills, and that was started in the 1800s, in the early 1800s. And not unlike a lot of the towns and cities in the area, Lawrence was heavily occupied by immigrants that were brought into the city. And so you can see on this map all of the different groups that were sort of segregated according to their nationality. The mills depended on energy that was drawn by the dam. This is the Great Stone Dam, or the Lawrence Dam. Construction on this was started in 1845, and the dam feeds 2 canals, the North Canal and the South Canal. And then the canals were actually abandoned in 1960, and then a hydroelectric plant was built in 1981. The water power rights was something very important during that time period. In the 1830s, a man named Daniel Saunders purchased strips of land along the Merrimack River to gain these rights. And interestingly, he was involved with the Underground Railroad. Wikipedia points out some interesting information. The dam is constructed of huge granite blocks. The base starts at 35 feet, which narrows to 13 feet. And that at the time, this was the largest dam in the world, and that the granite masonry is so spectacular that there's been no repairs needed since the time that it was created. The Lawrence History site says that in 1847, Lawrence was incorporated into a town. In 1848, the Great Stone Dam was complete. In 1849, the high school begins. So this is a picture of the high school, and you can see it does look old world. It has some old world features. In 1850, the population was 8358, and then in 1853 was chartered as a city. The mill buildings are just absolutely massive in Lawrence, and this is a picture from Google Earth. On the left side is the wood worsted mill, and on the right side is the air mill. The wood worsted mill was constructed between 1906 and 1909 for the American Woolen Company. It was known to the locals as the eighth wonder of the world, and if you were standing near it, you would see why it was called that. It's absolutely enormous. 6 stories high. The building is 1,300 feet or 400 meters long and 125 feet or 38 meters high. The building also encompasses 17 miles or 27 kilometers of aisles. And this is an older picture of the mill. Some sections no longer exist at this time. And the purpose of the building was to have a complete textile manufacturing cycle from the raw to the finished products under one roof. It's known as a Romanesque revival style with granite and stone details. And the next couple of pictures are what the wood worsted mill looks like today. When the wood worsted mill opened in 1906, they were spinning the wool of 600,000 sheep in 5 hours, but they decided that they still could not produce all of the yarn requirements that were needed. So this mill was opened across the street. This is called the air mill, and it was built to spin and dye yarn. It also has the world's largest clock mill tower, which is only 6 inches smaller than Big Ben. So the clock tower had a bell made of copper and tin, and it weighed 4,850 pounds. And according to this article, the original bell disappeared after the mill closed, and nobody really knows what happened to it. And then the clockwork was original to the building, made of brass and iron, and that weighed 2,000 pounds. So I thought that was pretty incredible. And I have heard that some of the clocks from the old world have actually been replaced to modern versions. So who knows what this clock really looked like originally, but this is definitely an old world tower with the copper and the dome on top. Beautiful, beautiful brickwork. So it's just amazing the amount of bricks that these mills have, even currently to this day. Bridges are something that really fascinates me, and I feel that a lot of them are part of the old world. So this one was supposedly built in 1888 and is part of the Boston Bridge Works Company. So this company, it appears, had about 103 bridges that were constructed all across New England, and this is made of iron. Then across the river from the wood worsted mill was this mill, and you can see the beautiful brickwork again with the arches above the windows. And then really what was striking was what was towards the bottom. It looked almost like melted brick, or I guess it could have been some kind of granite that was used, but it did sort of look like brick to us. The Pemberton Mill was a really well-known mill in Lawrence at that time. It opened in 1853 and was 5 stories high, 280 feet long, and 84 feet wide. And that mill manufactured cotton fabric. And then about 7 years later, in 1860, the mill collapsed and trapped 600 workers. And additionally, there was a strange story about a lantern igniting a fire, which led to further damage. So another mysterious fire story. And then you can see part of the North Canal here, where the mill sort of sat along this. And the walls of the canal have some granite stone, it looks like. And then this here is another part of the canal, and at a different location, but it was really interesting because you can see some of the mud flooding because there's a layer of grass kind of in the middle, and then above that are some buried windows, it looks like. But what's really interesting is in the front of this, which is right above the water of the canal, it looks almost like a damaged building. And so all along the canal here, it doesn't really look like a wall per se, but it looks like it was part of a building at one point in time. So whether this waterway was actually a canal or if it was just flooding some remnants of old buildings, we're not really sure, but just very interesting structures here. And then this is just another view. So again, you can see the layer of grass in the middle of the picture with the buried windows, and then right above that water from the canal, it looks like damaged brick or possibly granite, but I don't know, to me it kind of looks like brick. And then the beautiful architecture that curves around this building, the brick masonry. And then switching from the mills for now, we're going to show you some other interesting arts. This is the Sacred Heart Parish, owned by the Roman Catholic Archdiocese of Boston and sold in 2004. It consists of 5 buildings on the campus built between 1899 and 1936, including this Gothic Revival stone church made of granite. And then just showing you some details of the church. When I zoomed in on the spire, one of the spires, these, I don't know, spike-looking elements that come out from the spire, when I zoomed in, looks almost like these leaves that were just kind of wrapped around. This sculpture is above one of the doorways on the front door of the church, and to me, when I looked at the figures that were sculpted here, it almost looked like an add-on. It was a little bit of a different color than the rest of the church. On the right-hand side, you can see the symbol that looks like a Freemasonry symbol to me. There's also some Latin words on this. And then this section here, well, you can see some of the copper green that goes above this, that kind of frames around the doorway. But I don't know, some of the plaster or something there, it looks like there was something that was there before that is now missing. But you can see some of the other work. I don't know if this is original or an add-on, but it's interesting. You can also see on either side of the doorway above the lamps, there are these big columns made within the granite, and these actually looked like there was something that was there before that held something, and now it's missing. And then this is just zooming in on the part of the roof. It did look like a slate roof to me with some copper features. And this is another building on the campus behind the church. I believe it was a school, but had absolutely beautiful brickwork and masonry, and you can see just the outline of the different, I think it's woodwork above like the doorway and along the roof. It was just an absolutely beautiful building, beautiful arches. This is the St. Patrick Parish. It was formed in 1868 after there was a recognition of spiritual needs of the Irish Catholic population that was there at the time. And in 1869, a wooden church was built and completed. And then in 1881, this is the new church building was laid and was dedicated in 1894. So you can see all of the beautiful brickwork and the beautiful details and the copper that lined the peaks, along with the arches around the windows. The walls In the front, there's kind of like with a stairwell. There you can see it looks actually newer than the rest of the building. Here's an older version of the St. Patrick Parish that I was able to find online, one of the vintage photographs. And you can see, it still has a lot of the same features. The short wall that is in front of the main entrance does look a little bit different in this photograph. So I think the wall that's there now is actually newer. So now we're going to the Lawrence Common, where the City Hall, so the City Hall is on the building on the right, and the courthouse, the building on the left, are located. And these are some old pictures of them. You can see the beautiful, again, the brickwork. The courthouse on the left appears to be a gold dome on the top of the tower, and on the right-hand side is an eagle on the top of the tower. So you can see the changes that they've made to the building on the right-hand side. Incredible, right? So the brick looks completely different. It's a much lighter color. It actually looks like the front part of the building is newer because it's more flush with the tower, and the building on the left-hand side, the tower is sort of in the front of the building. So here the City Hall is on the right-hand side, the courthouse is on the left-hand side. In between is this brick alley that has some beautiful symmetrical patterns. We're not sure if this is original or not, but seemed to be likely that it might be. Some of the features of the courthouse, so the big pillars that surround the doorway, and then again it had some copper that lined the roof. And then on the very top of the roof, you can see those sphere-like shapes that kind of sat on the top there. And this sculpted pattern was above the doorway. It almost looks like it's plaster, but again, very pretty shapes. Some leaves, it looks like. This is Grace Episcopal Church, and this is kind of not a great picture, but we were taking this picture as we were driving by. And it had really striking features, the beautiful stone, you can see the windows, and then that kind of tower on the top that was also made of stone. Here is an older picture of that same church, and according to their website, there was an original wood building that stood at this site in 1846, and then the congregation realized that it needed to rebuild, so it rebuilt within 5 years in stone, and then this church was dedicated in 1852. So we don't have too much information about this. It was located down a side street along one of the streets of the Common, and I remember seeing a sign that said that it belonged to the Roman Catholic Church, but the building looked abandoned. However, it had some beautiful features. The brick work at the top, you can see the diamond panes and the pillars along the windows there. And listening to Your Anon's documentary that contained information about the bandstands that are often seen, that possibly they house engines or batteries. So this bandstand is found in the South Common of Lawrence, so it's a different common. It had some interesting features. It's made of brick, it had a chimney, has arched windows. There isn't a whole lot of information that I came across about the bandstand, but there was a plaque that said that it was dedicated in the 1940s. The other interesting thing that we noticed about this is that it has granite slabs that are kind of around the whole entire structure. And then it also had vents, so you can see in the right lower corner there's some like little posts sticking out of the ground that looked like they were vents. The other thing is that it does have a copper finial on the top of the bandstand. The last thing I wanted to mention is that Lawrence is known as a city filled with crime, and this is the crime grade site, and they give Lawrence a D. And one of the Boston Magazine articles actually called Lawrence the city of the damned, and said that it was the most godforsaken place in Massachusetts due to the widespread crime, failing schools, and crippled government. And I really think that the media sensationalizes a lot of the negative things that happen in the city along the Merrimack River. And as we go along exploring the different cities, you'll see that they are kind of known as high crime rates, etc. But Lawrence has, I think that this is just a distraction for the beautiful gems that Lawrence actually contains. And here is a summary of Lawrence's modern day past that has some amazing clues to the old world and the gems of the old world. So it used to be called the Queen City of the Merrimack Valley. It had the nation's first planned industrial city. Lawrence was a leader in cotton and woolen textiles. It had the largest mill clock, the largest dam of its time, and one mill was called the eighth wonder of the world. We hope you enjoyed our presentation of Lawrence, Massachusetts along the Merrimack River, and we'd love to hear any of your feedback and comments below. And we'll look forward to bringing you more footage and photos of this beautiful city.